All right, we're live. Is Lovie Smith earning another year? Could Lovie Smith earn another year as Texans head coach? Should he? The answer is no. I don't think he should. On the comments, by the way, appreciate the subscriptions. We wanted to get to 1,000 before the end of the year. We got there. Want to keep it going. It's only going to get better as the offseason approaches. One of the most exciting off seasons in Texans history. Michael asks, why even bring this topic up? Why wouldn't I, Michael? Andy Reid said yesterday that Lovie Smith deserved time. So there's answer number one. The Texans believe that, or many Texans fans feel that they need a new head coach, and many people believe otherwise. So yeah, thanks for the topic suggestions. But yeah, I think it's a pretty good topic there. Oh, Mikey Mike. Appreciate you for being in though. Don't give Cal any ideas. I think Cal is going to make the right decision. If he doesn't, then I don't know how you sell the fan base on being excited about Lovie Smith. For the situation last year, I thought it was fine hiring Lovie Smith. There are a lot of variables that we've been through. First of all, you had the Deshaun Watson cloud looming over the Houston Texans. So it was more difficult to get candidates. Jack Easterby was there. A lot of people don't want to work with Jack Easterby. So there was that. And you didn't have the draft equity and you didn't have the cap space. So that is why the situation is different. OY says this is a slow dying death. Maybe so, or maybe it'll be quick. Who knows? Joshua says Lovie will 100% be the coach next year. NFL is pushing hard for it with Schefter's story yesterday and Andy Reid comments. I want to get into the Andy Reid comments, and I'll get into the Schefter story as well. And appreciate the comments. Keep subscribing. I very much appreciate y'all. The Schefter thing was stupid. Like, I don't know who he's carrying the water for, but he's talking about like money that owners are paying fired coaches. Like, how are we looking at that? Are you looking at that were they trying to say don't fire coaches? Were they saying don't hire bad coaches? And furthermore, let's get a spreadsheet of how many players are getting paid not to play. Hell, Marcus Cannon's making, I think, $5-6 million to not do a damn thing this year. So I don't think that meant a damn thing. I thought it was a random report by Adam Schefter. I think it means nothing. And what means even less is Andy Reid's comments, which is what I want to get into here before I bring in Brandon Scott, who has a story on sportsradio610.com about this. This was what Andy Reid said yesterday after the game.
Listen, it was a weird game. My hat goes off to Lovie for the great job in which he's done here. I mean, you've seen it the last 2 weeks. It's a hard job, and it takes time as a head coach. And Lovie, my word of advice is just give him time. He's a tremendous football coach. I've had a chance to compete against him for a number of years, and just rock solid football team.
I think he's below 500 in the NFL. He's below 500 in college. I think it's close to 30 games under 500 as a head coach. So Andy thinks that. First of all, I don't think Andy pays attention to the Houston Texans too much. God dang, I feel like I shouldn't, and I do it for a living. So I don't think he pays a lot of attention to the Houston Texans. Also, there's kind of a certain feel of cover your own ass with Andy Reid when he goes up there, because Kansas City was coming off a sluggish performance against the Denver Broncos. Ron the Show Hughley, who you hear 2 to 6, he's actually on the air right now, Monday through Friday on Sports Radio 610. He has Kansas City ties. Apparently the Chiefs were going all in on this game, and they look like crap. Andy Reid said it was a weird game. I really didn't see anything weird in that football game. I've watched a hell of a lot of weird football games. Dallas game was a little bit weird. The Indianapolis game was weird. There've been weird games with the Texans a lot of the time. That didn't seem weird. I mean, that seemed like a team that was more talented, that has toughness issues, that just allowed an inferior team to hang around for whatever reason. There was nothing weird about that. So those are the first two things about Andy Reid's comments. First of all, I don't think he's very educated on the Texans and what goes on all the time. Second of all, I think there's a little bit of a cover your ass element. And the third thing is he's friends with Lovie Smith and he's friends with David Culley. Probably better friends with David Culley than he is Lovie Smith. So he's friends with both of those guys. David Culley last year, we all know David Culley, he was one and done. And David Culley, I'm sure Andy Reid probably thought should have gotten another year. Now his other friend is here. So he's talking patience. And here's Andy Reid in his own words talking about how he's buddies with Lovie Smith. And you'll also hear him break down Lovie Smith as a coach. And it's clear, I don't think he really follows Lovie as much as a lot of people have.
I'm friends with Lovie. I mean, I think he's a heck of a guy and a great coach. So he came from that Tampa 2 group of coaches that did that, and he's evolved with that.
No, he hasn't.
With the way the game is now. So
definitely not.
He's going to give you a great defense that plays hard.
Definitely not.
And aggressive.
They do play hard.
And he's not afraid to do whatever he has to do to win the game. And so that's where the challenge comes in. And his guys play hard for him.
That's
so
true.
You've got to.
That's true.
You have to be prepared and ready to go.
There you go.
In this league, the margin between winning and losing is like that. It's crazy.
So the random Schefter report, 0 stock in that. The Andy Reid comments, negative 0 stock in that. Not buying any of that. So that's just where I sit there. I think the Texans need a new head coach. I think the Texans are going to hire a new head coach. Lovie Smith's going to get a check. And the Schefter thing, I don't know what was the point. What was the point? No idea. Texans situation is a little different. I'll get to the comments before I get Brandon Scott in here, who typed on this for sportsradio610.com. Oh, why? Why is Culley and Lovie getting fired but not Nick? Is it because they're Easterby hires? I don't know. Look, there's a couple ways to answer that question. Number one, I think we knew what the deal was with those situations, with those hires. Like we knew what the damn deal was. Like if we want to rewrite history, and the Texans don't deserve the benefit of the doubt, so sometimes the goalposts can get moved. But we knew what the deal was when they hired David Culley. We knew David Culley wasn't a long-term fix. We saw David Culley coach. We realized that David Culley was a pretty flawed head coach, and he was probably in over his head. So he got an opportunity that he would have never gotten because of the Houston Texans. He got $24 million, and they were going to bring in a new coach. Now, the bleep show went down after that. The Deshaun Watson cloud was still going on, and then they made the Lovie Smith hire, which even to this day I think was a fine hire because I think your options were limited. You did have the Watson cloud over you, and you had that situation. So let's kind of look at those situations. I don't mind criticizing Nick Caserio, and I think it's a fair question to be asked. But let's look at those situations just a little bit closely, and let's not like rewrite history and act like we weren't there and we didn't realize, Lovie Smith, David Culley weren't going to be the long-term answers. And furthermore, those guys weren't going to get like head coaching jobs anywhere else. So let's look at it that way. Ryan asks, is B. Scott coming in? Yes, he's actually on standby. We'll get him in here. I just want to get through these comments really quick. Oh, why? Again, owners can spend however they want to the money. Callahan, I need to bring in D'Amico. Yes, D'Amico. And then you had Andre at the Rockets game. We've discussed that a little bit. Texans need to lose the next 2 games and get that number 1 pick locked up. Yes, sir. You are a very, very bright guy, that Nick guy. And that looks like a really big fish. I can't quite tell, but it looks like a pretty big fish that you caught there. So congratulations on that catch, man. John Lopez would be very proud of you. James says, well, at least they play hard. Yes, they do. I'll give them credit for that if that's something that we want to do. Serious question. Okay. If you wouldn't have put serious question, I might have thought you were joking. What would be Lovie's next job if he's relieved of his duties? I'm thinking college DC or high school fodder. I don't know. I wouldn't hire him to be my DC. I will say that. But maybe he hangs around here and he has like some sort of Romeo Crennel type position. I don't know. He's damn sure a tough guy to hire in college. And as a defensive coordinator, even going back to his Chicago days, I don't know about all that either. Let's bring in Brandon Scott. Brandon Scott, sportsradio610.com. My goodness. Are you cold or something, man?
Yeah, man. You know I don't do good in the cold.
Yeah.
I told you when we were in Philly last week that I am a tropical people. I am not here for the cold at all.
What do you make of all this Lovie Smith talk and Andy Reid's comments?
Man, I don't make anything of it. Like I think it's fine for Andy Reid to say what he said. And I also think it's cool. Like I was just listening to Ron and Clint just a minute ago, giving Lovie and Pep credit for the game plan and everything that happened on Sunday and them coming close against Kansas City. Like, I think that's cool to give them credit for where credit's due. Like, you can say, hey, this was a good game for the coaching staff. Lovie Smith, Pep Hamilton had the guys ready to play. It was a good game plan. And like, you can take it at face value without it having to be a larger picture statement of what needs to happen with the Texans going forward. Like, it doesn't mean that just because they've had 2 good games in a row that somehow negates the fact that it has been, a mess of a season. And even aside from that this is clearly not what your plan was to begin with. And I think that's the only thing that I probably go away from you with on this whole where we are with the coaching staff thing or the coaching hires, about us knowing where they were and all of that. Like, yes and no. Like, we did know that the situation was awful and like far less than ideal. Like, that's not a secret at all. But it's just such a, I feel like after you look at it all in its totality, it shows like a lack of vision. When you think, okay, David Culley, none of us, Landry, when they hired David Culley, were like, yeah, that makes sense. Because we didn't even know who the guy was. And then the fact that
I'm not going to pretend I did. I didn't
at all. And then
I didn't know the receiver. I can't name very many receivers coaches in the NFL, and that's what he was for a long time.
And then when his name came out on the list, I remember the shows kind of just dismissing, at least the show that's on right now, I remember them just kind of just dismissing him as a name, because it's like, well, why would this even be somebody that you would consider? And then it's fine once they do that. It's like, okay, this is weird, but let's go with that. But Lovie Smith's already on the staff when they hire him, and then Lovie Smith ends up being the coach. We know what the situation is there, but here we know that if Lovie Smith was a viable candidate for head coach, there was no reason for him to have been on David Culley's staff, somebody who we had never heard of. So like all of it, the 2 years together shows like a lack of vision, and sort of it's just hard to have confidence in it. But that doesn't mean that you keep Lovie Smith, though. You know what I mean? And having a good game against the Cowboys and a good game against the Kansas City Chiefs doesn't mean that he's the answer for you. To me, and the point that I was trying to make on the article on sportsradio610.com was basically that everything that you do from now on needs to be with the number 1 overall pick in mind, whoever that may be. Do you think Lovie Smith and Pep Hamilton are the ones that should be entrusted with the number 1 overall pick? Whoever it is that you like to be the number 1 overall pick. I feel like you and I are on the Bryce Young train, but if you want Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, like, do you want this coaching staff, this regime, to be the one that is responsible for the number 1 overall pick?
Yeah,
and I think that like that's the relevant question. Not did they almost beat the Chiefs, not that they almost beat the Cowboys, but did the 1-win season give you confidence in that? The answer is no.
The answer is absolutely no. Ryan Crossingham, I would love a tell-all book on the last couple of years. I'm sure there's so much that we don't know that went on. One of my posts on Easterby, I'll give you, there's a lot of what, like, through Easterby's eyes, but I don't know who would write the tell-all book. There's a lot of angles. So, yeah, would be interesting. But, yeah, I mean, I was talking today, and I think the most important question when talking about these types of decisions is like asking yourself, why not first? I think instead of focusing on why something should happen, I think you should focus on why not. And it brings you to the why. And sometimes it magnifies how good the why is. My main example is like, why not DeMeco Ryans? Like if I'm talking to you and I ask you, like we could sit here and list the whys for D'Amico Ryans and why it makes sense. But like my question would be like, why not? And it's kind of a hard game to play. And that's what I think Cal and Hannah should make Nick Caserio do when it comes to each candidate. Like, tell me why not? Why not fire Lovie Smith? Like, what is the case to not fire Lovie Smith? Because the only thing that I've heard, and I'll be honest, outside of Andy Reid, I haven't heard too many people say Lovie Smith should be back for a second year. Like, especially people that actually watch the team. Now, when Andy Reid says it, it generates headlines and people grab it and stuff like that. But I haven't heard too many people say that. The only why not that I hear when we talk about Lovie Smith is, well, you can't afford to fire a head coach, one and done 2 straight years. It's a made up rule, first of all. Second of all, it's a very unique situation that they found themselves in. And it's not like Lovie Smith isn't already a finished product. Even Lovie at his peak, you have an idea of what Lovie Smith was. So there's not like a mysterious product. And furthermore, if you're worried about some sort of like perception, and in the Flores instance, I don't think it mattered as much because they weren't in a good spot to really win anyways. Like it wasn't like outside of maybe Jonathan Gannon, there weren't really like long-term options, and depending on what they thought about McCown. But it doesn't like it just doesn't make sense for Lovie Smith to be back. Like it just doesn't make any sense. What would be the reason? Like, why not? The only thing I hear is, well, the perception. But what happens if next year he wins 6 games? Then all of a sudden, if you're worried about perception and we're going to play that game, then let's just move the goalpost and say, well, a guy went from 1 win to 6 wins and you just fired him. Just like what Lovie always talks about in Tampa Bay. So I don't think that's a good mindset to have. I think the Texans should be aware of things. And I think the Texans should take everything into account. But if you're worried about perception, that perception is not going to go anywhere. It's going to be a moving goalpost each time, and that's just not that's not how winning teams think.
But I think with that though, Landry, that's the problem with playing with the perception games in the first place.
Exactly,
I feel
which they did with Lovie.
Yeah, and so here lies the problem. Like, I feel like they could have gotten away with hiring Lovie Smith when they hired David Culley, with the intent that they had when they hired David Culley. And maybe they could have even gotten away with keeping David Culley through last year. But since they did play the optic and perception game, and or how are we characterizing it? Optics, perception, and all of that. Like, since they did play in that game, now it's like it's almost just like circular logic. Like, which one are you doing? Like and again, I'll reiterate, it doesn't mean that you keep Lovie Smith. I think bottom line, Landry, like through all of this optic discussion, you have a 1-win season. You can justify firing anybody that's involved in a 1-win season. Optics be damned. So I think in some ways that's sort of a bailout and a cop-out, whether you want to look at it from perception or merit or whatever. Like, 1-win season, you can justifiably get fired, no matter what the politics around it is. So I think that that's where they are. But it is a problem that they have already kind of danced around in this perception business, went and hired Lovie Smith again. Did not actually make a whole lot of sense considering how he got there, the fact that he was on David Culley, he was on the staff of somebody that we never heard of. So it just shows a lack of vision and a lack of cohesion. And then the perception standpoint that I think does matter, maybe less so to us, but maybe more so to candidates and people that want to come work here. You talk about all the reasons why this job is appealing. Number 1 overall pick, more than likely. All these draft picks that you got, cap space, an owner that's willing to spend at the very least. All of those things exist, but at the same time, it's like, man, but do they know what they're doing over there? Like, that is the perception problem, or I would say the real perception problem that exists, and that kind of speaks more so to the McNairs and Nick Caserio, I think. And I'll
bring it back to the question I'm going to ask, and you're going to see this a lot. Warning, so that there might be a whole video on this. So Y'all know how I am. Once I find my shit, I kind of just like to keep it going because I think it's important. Let's go back to the why not. Why not Nick Caserio?
Oh, and
You know?
your why not video is going up on the Sports Radio 16 YouTube page as we speak. It's loading right now, just so they know.
The other thing is the why not though, like why not Nick Caserio? You know, like I mean, I think that's an easier question to answer than like why not D'Amico Ryans. So I'm with you on that. Now, as far as like the playing with the optics, I think we can all agree that they kind of did with the McCown thing. I will say though, they did have the Deshaun Watson like stuff going on too. So there was just really kind of a lot going on to where you can only handle so much shit as a organization and from a PR perspective. Like, okay, Brian Flores lawsuit, which at the time it was blowing up. I don't know what happened with the lawsuit. I think Mike McDaniel's performance should kind of just get that lawsuit dismissed, maybe. But like you had Brian Flores lawsuit, you have Deshaun Watson cloud. Like there is only so much shit you can put up with. And it's not like they were, going to hire Bill fucking Belichick. Like as much as I had some fun with the McCown train, I don't think you want to let bleep hit the fan at that level for Josh McCown. That would have been that would have been pretty ballsy, unless you just thought he was God's gift to coaching.
But is it too much to ask to just hire a competent coach that people can actually believe that you even wanted to hire?
But the problem is, but my thing is this: like if you hire Jim Caldwell, you're not firing him after a year. Like no matter what, like even what if you don't?
So you fire him after the 2. So you do these wash years that we all agree are.
But then you don't. But with Jim Caldwell, you're in the 7-win range, and then you're not in as good of a spot to like clean stuff up. Like it's weird. So I'm not saying it makes sense. Like again, you say this all the time. We're trying to make sense of the senseless when we talk about this organization sometimes in the way that they functioned, but trying to make sense, which is dangerous. Maybe it just doesn't make sense. You're just trying to hire guys to get to where you are in this upcoming season and then try to figure stuff out. I don't know. I don't know. It just, to me, if they would have hired Jim Caldwell, I think we're looking at maybe 6 wins last year and then who knows what this year. And then you move on, but you don't have the number 1 pick. You don't have this. I don't think that was like a calculated tank or anything like that.
I was going to say that to me is giving them a little bit more credit on the logic side than I'm willing to do. Like, I don't think that they were like, well, if we hire a coach that's kind of okay and too good, but not bad enough, then we're going to be in this place. Like I think that there was just some sort of weird thing going on with the Nick and Jack thing and whatever Jack's influence was on what the hires were back then. And even like to the Lovie Smith point, why Lovie Smith is here, all of these guys, like, and that to me, if you're going to ask that question, let's go back to your question, right? Why keep Lovie Smith? Here's a reason why to get rid of Lovie Smith and Nick Caserio too. To that point, it's like, do you want to completely cleanse yourself of everything that Jack had his hands on? And I know you're somebody that didn't want to give too much credit to Jack for Nick being here, so I get that.
Well, but I mean, he's going around telling people that he's the reason why, so I'll take his word for it. And I know that they're buddies, and I know they sound alike, and I know that Nick is still to this day saying he did some good things for the organization. So, yeah.
I mean, are you at a point where, okay, number 1 overall pick, job is finally somewhat attractive, at the very least, somewhat attractive? Is it time to just, you've got all the resources that you need? So that would to me would be also a relevant question. Is like, is it time to get rid of everything that is linked to probably the worst stretch in franchise history?
Yeah, and I think that's a valid question. Like I think it's a very valid question. You get through the mud and then you just get rid of everything, because people look at Nick Caserio sideways in a lot of cases because of that. And this is another thing that Andy Reid said that I thought was kind of telling, man. And I think this speaks to like the other element of things. This was Andy Reid talking about the fans yesterday.
Listen, our fans were unbelievable today. I think, we had more fans than maybe what the Texans had, and it was great to see all that red, and I think that helped us with the support down that overtime.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with trust issues. We can bottom line it and we can simplify it, and we can go like, oh well, you win, the people are going to come. Okay. I mean, even in 2019, I know they were selling out games, but you could sense that fans were kind of getting over the blind loyalty to Bill O'Brien. Like there was a port. I'm not like it's not me making stuff up. I don't think there are too many people that like interact with fans consistently as much as our station, our show, etc. And myself, like there was apathy and there was like blind faith. There will be a portion of people that, look at Nick Caserio sideways and say, he's Bill O'Brien's buddy. He's Jack Easterby's buddy. Like, what have we really done? And if you want to wipe that away, you can wipe it away. It just depends. How good do you think Nick Caserio is? Do you think Nick Caserio is the guy that's gonna take you where he wants to take you? Are you kind of embarrassed that Nick Caserio was such buddies with Jack Easterby? Like, who knows? Like, the other thing is this, like, it's easy to blame Jack, and I think Jack's a jackass. I think he's a sociopath. I think he's a bad person, and I think that he is a liar, and I think he's one of the scariest type of people in the world. Other than that, he's a great dude. But like, who knows what kind of conversations like Nick Caserio and Jack Easterby had, like with Cal and Hannah, to where their visions were proportional. I think like it's the same thing with Easterby and O'Brien. I thought it was funny that, those guys were basically holding hands, repeating the same things, talking about, their philosophies and stuff. And then as soon as O'Brien's gone, Jack Easterby's telling anyone that wants to listen that, Bill O'Brien was the problem and I had nothing to do with it. And, he basically acted like his era with the Houston Texans started in 2020, despite what, many former players have said, despite what Andre Johnson has said. He still insisted upon that. So is Nick the same way? Like, I don't think if Nick were here that it would have gotten as bad as it did with Jack and Bill, like with the Tunsil trade, et cetera. I don't think that happens in the Hopkins trade. But like, do Cal and Hannah look at this and say, okay, like, was it really all Jack, or was this like a team effort? I don't know the answer to it, but they're the ones who had like the discussions with him, and they know like how philosophically they were aligned. And the other thing is like the Lovie Smith thing, there's people that are saying, well, Jack hired the coaches. I don't know. It would be kind of troubling because Caserio was here, but I do know that Jack was Lovie Smith's guy. He wanted Lovie Smith. I don't know what the master plan was. Maybe Jack laid out the master plan before he hired Caserio. And he said, this is what we want to do. We want to bring in Josh McCown and figure this out. I don't know. But that's something that Cal and Hannah are really going to have to think about.
Yeah. So the one thing I can say about the Jack and Nick similarity is that both of them, when you talk about them sounding alike, okay, using a lot of the same language, both of them fancy themselves on like being like a nerd who like is like deeper than sports, but like
Silicon Valley references right there. Joshua Stanley right there.
Yeah. Right. Silicon Valley references, smartest guy in the room type of stuff. And with Jack, over time, I guess it didn't really take long, but it was like a tougher sell as time went on. It's like, okay, this happened. How did this guy get here? Sort of situation. Then Nick comes in with more personnel type credibility, but sounds the same. They're sort of the same mind. The feeling and the hope is like Nick is sort of the more competent football personnel minded version of what Jack was trying to be. I think that was sort of the idea. But going back to the question, it's like, is that the case or not? And I think right now, when you're asking the question or looking at it, like, to me, all of the things that defend Nick right now are the built-in excuses that he would have had no matter how things went. How messed up the scenario was that he walked into, the Deshaun Watson situation, Bill O'Brien and Jack Easterby and what they left him, not having draft picks, a messed up salary cap, like, and just the fact that you need time as a general manager to make your imprint on an organization anyway. Like a lot
Yeah,
of people will say
I
that
think it's a lot.
that it's not wise to do it after just one or two after 2 off seasons anyway, and one full
It's a lot
draft.
harder to make an impact immediately as a general manager than it is as a coach, because a
course.
coach is going to be out there. They're going to have their hands on the team. And no matter what you give them, if you assess it correctly, like, and you grade them on a fair scale, they can maximize whatever they got. If you do that, like, it's not as simple as, oh, this guy won 6 games and this guy won 11 games. That's a meathead simple mindset. But you can, like, as a coach, like, you can make your impact immediately, like Brian Dable with the Giants and plenty of other examples.
Yeah, for sure. But at the same time with that, and preface this is not a defense. This actually is what would be an indictment on Lovie Smith and Pep Hamilton, because it's clear that they haven't done that. But it is also, like, even harder to do. Like, the harder the general manager's job is, the harder it is for him to field you a team, the harder it is for you to produce a good coaching product. So, like, but even with that, they have not even maximized that is probably the problem that you would say, because I think they got more talent this year and somehow have been worse than what they were last year. And that, to me, is what the indictment is. But I don't know. It's still hard in the evaluation, because you're like, man, this guy, like Nick Caserio, when you're trying to evaluate him, like, man, he had nothing, but did he maximize what he had? And did the coaches maximize what they had? And to me right now, it's hard to feel like you really did. Like, what do you feel good about? You feel good about, you know what I mean? You feel good about the secondary. Like I was mentioning this to somebody in the press box yesterday, that, like, not only did they upgrade the starter, but the depth is impressive. Like
I think Tremont Smith should get an in-season extension. I like him a lot.
Yeah. And if I knew Tremont Smith could play like that, I would have definitely beaten the drum a little bit harder for Kayvon Thibodeau or whoever I was talking
here
about.
Now. You got to bring that up. You're going to make some people upset.
Hey, I'm just saying that the number 3 overall pick, I got on with the Derek Stingley thing, because they've been trying to figure out corner for years and they've been able to do it. And I like Stingley. I like Sauce too. So I was with it. But I didn't know that Tremont Smith could play. And so that's, I'm not saying he's Derek Stingley, but yeah, I'm giving him credit though for that.
Yeah.
Like, you like,
they got depth.
So they got depth in the secondary. Damian Pierce, Tegan Couturiano, Nico Collins could be a piece. Like, but I mean, there for all of that, you still get the Justin Britts of the world, the Conor Grigier Hills of the world, all of the swings and misses. Rex Burkhead, Shaq Lawson, Guaranteed Money, Marcus Cannon, the Brandon Cooks deal that you got going on right now. I mean, like, all of that, and not trading Brandon Cooks. So, like, for everything that you can, like, it's kind of a wash, and there's nothing really there that you're like, yeah, I'm confident because that thing happened, or because that thing is happening. And then the coaching thing is just kind of a pile on with it all.
We're getting a lot of Hard Knocks pushing. Patrick just said it, and Brown Chubby Bear's been saying it. They want the Texans on Hard Knocks. Wouldn't mind.
Do we really feel like we would get the goods from that though? Do we really?
No, I don't care if we get the goods or not. I wouldn't mind it.
Oh yeah, no. I'm just asking for, like, what is his motivation? I wouldn't mind it either. Like, that we'd probably get a chance to get a quick shot.
Would be made fun of badly.
Oh yeah. I wonder what they would do with some of that word salad. Like, if they would kind of, like, play some music behind it and be like, what the hell is this dude talking about?
Yeah.
But if you think you're going to get some insight into the dysfunction, I doubt that that'd be the case.
We wouldn't get that. It'd be new vibes, man. New coach, all that type of stuff. Rally cry. It'd be fun, man.
Yeah.
All right, B. Scott. Appreciate you, man. SportsRadio610.com. You can check it out.
Yep.
B. Scott.
Yep.
Brandon Scott. What about the you and Spillane got a rocket show?
Yeah, B Block dropping a little bit later on today, and H-Town Hoops covering the Rockets on the Odyssey app. That'll be let's see, we're recording that Tuesday night. We're recording that tomorrow night. So yeah, look for that a little bit later on in the week, Wednesday morning. Yep.
All right, there you go.
Check us out.
Keep doing your thing. Brandon Scott, sportsradio610.com and Sports Radio 610. You hear him on the air quite often. You hear him on the air on our show. Thursdays at 11 a.m. He's at every press conference. He's on the scene. The hardest working men in town, one of the most plugged in men in town. So do you think Lovie Smith deserves another year? I think most people would say no. Andy Reid, because they're buddies, because he doesn't know much better, because David Culley's his friend, because he's trying to cover his own ass. He would say yes, but we don't need to listen to Andy here. A lot of things we could listen to Andy about. This is not one of those things. Subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitter at Landry Locker. Follow me on Instagram at Landry Locker, TikTok, Landlock, and subscribe to the channel. Just keep spreading the love. We've reached 1,000. It's only going to get better. It is only going to get better. And no matter what, even if it doesn't get better, just remember we are all in this together. Have a good one, people.